I think this is being recorded now. Let me just start out from just this point. I would ask the question, are there any recent Nobel Prizes for this topic? Okay. Then I can ask the question, what are the important journals? And is this topic sufficiently represented in these important journals? Are they cited? For example, you can publish a paper, but nobody might read it or nobody might use it. So it's important that you have some citations. So not just that it is published, but it is also cited. Okay. I will show you a list of papers that I have collected for you. Some things that have been cited more than 50 times, 100 times, just in the last 3 years, organometallics papers. So then I will also see, is this research funded? Are there a lot of research organizations which are giving money for organometallic chemistry? And lastly, I can also check, is it being used in the industry? Because that is an important marker of how well or how easily you can get a job if you're qualified in this. This is a cyclic system. So if a particular topic is not sufficiently interesting that it is not going to change fundamental things in chemistry, and if it is going to change fundamental things in chemistry, obviously there would be a Nobel Prize for it. Okay? But if it is going to be extremely useful in everyday life, then the economy will be driven by it. And we will find all these things in today's lecture. I will quickly cover. I used to do this in detail, but this year I'm just going to do it in passing. In 1963, Ziegler and Natta got the Nobel Prize for making polymers, very useful polymers, polypropylene, polyethylene, and we have come to understand that these are in fact useful, but at the same time they are a big environmental hazard. So, but in 1963 when it was discovered, it was quite obvious that it was a very valuable commodity and it was very useful. So Ziegler and Natta were awarded the Nobel Prize, and they got it using titanium and zirconium catalysts. Titanium and zirconium catalysts. And these catalysts were actually organometallic systems. 10 years later, in 1973, Wilkinson and Fischer got the Nobel Prize for discovering what everybody knows as an archetypical organometallic compound, the famous ferrocene. They in fact went on a big periodic table race. They discovered practically all the metallocenes with almost every metallic system that was known in the periodic table. And they got a prize right after the importance of this was known. Fischer and Wilkinson were running parallel to each other. They both discovered about 50% each of all the metallocenes. Lipscomb is actually a main group organometallic chemist for boron chemistry, but boron is a half metal. It's a main group element which is just above aluminum, and it's almost a metal. And the chemistry of this has got a lot in common with organometallic chemistry. So I have included that. 1979, Brown and Wittig, they got it for, again, boron chemistry and phosphorus chemistry. Two elements which are on either side of the periodic table. I will just briefly tell you why this is also important. Fukui and Hoffman got it for frontier molecular orbital theory. This is in fact frontier molecular orbital theory was what they got the prize for. But Hofmann, half the prize was shared by Hofmann, and Hofmann explained all the organometallic chemistry structures that were known till date. That means practically it was in 1956 that Wilkinson and Fischer discovered ferrocene and showed the structure of ferrocene to be what it is. And Fukui and Hofmann were the ones who were able to explain all the organometallic structures that were there between 1956 to 1980. Fascinating structures were discovered, but many of these structures did not make any sense. They seem to be very strange from the chemistry point of view, from what was known about coordination chemistry and organic chemistry. There are only two types of chemistry known till then. One was organic chemistry, which was determined by carbon chemistry. The other was inorganic chemistry or coordination chemistry and solid state chemistry. So what was discovered between 1956 and 80 by all the organometallic chemists defied simple logic, or at least so it seemed, until Hofmann explained many of these structures beautifully using frontier molecular orbital theory. So we'll cover that also during the course, but this was awarded a Nobel Prize. Then in 2001, nearly 20 years later, Sharpless, Knowles and Naori got for asymmetric catalysis. And these asymmetric catalysis were mostly organometallic compounds, and they were also awarded the prestigious Nobel Prize. 2005, Schrock, Grubbs and Chauvin were presented the Nobel Prize for their discovery of metathesis catalysis and metathesis catalysts. And this was again very important discovery. Finally, in 2010, I have not kept track after 2010, but after 2010, Heck, Negishi and Suzuki have got it for organometallic chemistry. The carbon-carbon, simple carbon-carbon bond coupling that is extremely fundamental to organic chemistry and practically fundamental to any synthetic chemistry that goes on. Let's take a look at some of these things. I told you that I have collected a bunch of papers that have been published in 2018, 19 and 20. 20 is 3/4 over. So 18, 19 and 20, there are about 27 papers listed in important journals. Nature, Science, Journal of American Chemical Society, and Angewandte Chemie. These are top-ranking journals, and these journals have published some papers in organometallic chemistry, and these papers have been cited more than 20 times. Even though they are published only in 2020, they've been cited more than 10 times or 15 times. So I have collected these highly cited papers, and I'm going to share them with you. You can take a look and see how organometallic chemistry plays an important role. So, if you look at any paper, you will find that many of them have got an acknowledgement section, and you will find that many national and international committees which fund research are funding this type of chemistry. Okay. Now I'm going to skip through these few slides. These slides talk about the important topics that are being handled by organometallic chemists, and most of them are a bit dated, so I'm going to skip discussing this specifically. I will share you the full list of full list of papers that have been recently cited heavily, and so they are important papers. So In this slide, for example, let me just take one of them and show you what I mean by interesting. Here is a compound which has got 6 trimethylphosphines coordinated to molybdenum 0. This is a molybdenum 0 complex, which means it is not positively, molybdenum is a metal and would like to be, it is very easily oxidized. But here molybdenum is in the 0 oxidation state, and it has got 6 trimethylphosphines, which are very electron rich. So they donate a lot of electron density to the molybdenum, and you can replace 3 of these molybdenum phosphorus, we can replace 3 of these ligands, PME3 ligands, by an aromatic ring system. And what is interesting is that this ring system has got 2 nitrogens in it. And the first step in this process seems to be the coordination of the molybdenum to the ring system, which has got the nitrogens. And subsequent step, the ring system has a rearrangement, and the molybdenum has moved to the completely carbon containing aromatic ring system here. So this is kinetically favored, this is thermodynamically favored. And tungsten behaves in that fashion. Interestingly, another organometallic species, here is another organometallic species, which is actually what I would call a heteroalkene. A heteroalkene, an alkene is a carbon-carbon bonded, double bonded system. CO would be a heteroalkene. Now, P double bond CH2 would be a heteroalkene. So this is a heteroalkene. So I should actually put, I should not put this plus charge. If I put a plus charge, I'll have to put a minus charge here. But this is a heteroalkene. And then I shouldn't put a double bond. So let me remove one of the double bonds. So this is in resonance with P double bond CH2, Me. So this is a compound in which both the carbon and the phosphorus are bonded to the tungsten. And surprisingly, that when it interacts with the same organic fragment, breaks the carbon-carbon bond. It has broken the carbon-carbon bond in the quinoxacylene ring system and formed this very strange molecule. And in addition, it also forms this other species here. In this case, please note, tungsten is in +2 oxidation state. The oxidation state is +2. We have not covered the oxidation state method, but let me just say that this is a +2 oxidation state because there are 2 hydrides which are coordinated to the tungsten. We call them hydrides, even though they are almost the same electronegativity as a metal. Okay, so I will skip these papers. Here is another interesting example. Here I have xenon. Xenon is coordinating to this metal complex, which has got a rhenium. And xenon is an inert molecule. So, Pankaj, you have a question? You can unmute and ask, please.
Yes, sir. In the last slide, you were talking about that shift of molybdenum from nitrogen-containing circle to ring to the non-benzonoid ring, that thermodynamic and kinetic product. Can you
Yes.
explain that thermodynamic and kinetic product with?
Yeah, usually the kinetic product is the one which is formed uh, as a function of time. You will find that it is accumulating to a significant amount. Subsequently, uh, if you give it sufficient time and thermal energy, the molecule becomes stabilized in this form. So how do you distinguish a kinetic product from a thermodynamic product? It's purely by doing kinetics. If you do kinetics of this reaction, if you react these two species as a function of time, you observe it. You first observe the formation of one, and then you start accumulating two. So, and you don't, if you heat this, you don't go back here. If you heat this, you don't go back here. But if I supply thermal energy to it, then this goes from 1 to 2. So that gives you the thermodynamic and the kinetic product difference.
I was curious if, as the molybdenum is already electron rich and connected to 3-phosphorus, so the ring containing no nitrogen will be strongly bonded to molybdenum, and thus it will be more stable than thermodynamic product.
That's a good observation, but I don't think the electron richness of the system can be so easily defined. I will explain this in a later class.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there is a complication involved with your line of argument. But let me finish this class, then I will come back to that. Okay. You're looking at basically the quick answer is the pi system is the one which is donating electron density. So the pi system has to be electron rich. It's not just the nitrogen lone pair that you're thinking of. Okay?
Yes, sir, I got your point. Yeah, I got
Fine.
your point.
Let's now go to, let me see where I was. Yeah. So, here is just a list of number of papers which have been published in this field. So the number of papers published in this field keeps increasing as a function of time, or people using organometallic chemistry, the number of people keeps increasing. So some of these papers might, for example, have used organometallic chemistry merely as a tool. They might have been synthesizing a natural product, or they might have been making a new material, but they still use organometallic chemistry. Okay, so a large number of papers cite organometallic chemistry as a keyword. So then, talking about the industry, let me quickly cover this part. Talking about the industry, you find that many organometallic compounds are used as catalysts for making polymers and fine chemicals. This is probably the most important use for organometallic compounds. But there are some organometallic compounds that are used in tonnage quantities. One of them is the use of organosilicons. Of course, silicon is a metal or a non-metal. It's a debatable question, but silicon-containing compounds and tin-containing compounds are used as additives. Tin-containing compounds are used as additives in polymers. You will be surprised to know that PVC, what we use extensively for buckets and things like that, they can have small amounts of tin. And the reason for adding tin there is that it is a thermal stabilizer. It prevents the decomposition of the HCl from coming out from the PVC. So acetic acid, acetaldehyde, polypropylene are all molecules which are made in tonnage quantities. These are made using organometallic compounds and catalysts. So with this, I would say that I have a thesis for saying that organometallic chemistry is a very important subject. If you are just checking it out, it's worth your checking it out in detail, following it. Now, let me end by saying, why is organometallic chemistry really different? In what way is it different? Are we dealing with a special element? Now, we are talking about all the metals in the periodic table plus carbon. Okay, so we have all the elements plus carbon. So which element is special? Is it carbon? Now, if I ask you this question, what is special about carbon? Some of you are organic chemists, and so immediately you will be coming up with these standard answers. Carbon is one element which is able to concatenate. It forms carbon-carbon bonds very easily and are very strong. It forms strong multiple bonds, carbon-carbon, forms very strong with another special element which is hydrogen, and there are some very stable molecules which are formed by organic compound. Excuse me. These stable aromatic compounds, so to speak, are stable at very high temperatures, unlike simple organic compounds. But that's not really the reason why I think organometallic chemistry is. Organometallic chemistry is special for another reason. But carbon is a special element. I'm not discounting that. If you look at the electronic configuration of carbon, this is special because it can form 4 covalent bonds, and the energy between the 2s and the 2p is just right, so that the hybridization of the 2s 2p to form sp3 hybridized bonds are really energetically favorable. And no extra electrons are there, no vacant orbitals are there. If you take boron, you will have a vacant orbital. If you take nitrogen on the other side or phosphorus, it has got an extra pair of electrons. So we form 4 equivalent covalent bonds which are very stable. So carbon is special, no doubt about it. And if you look at this periodic table, it's a special periodic table, of course, but you have a carbon right in the center. This is where your carbon is. Okay. So carbon is a central element. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But organometallic chemistry is special because you're combining with a transition metal, which has got exactly the opposite properties. There are vacant orbitals on transition metals, almost always. There are extra electrons. I wouldn't say always. Titanium 4 plus would not have any extra electrons, but that's a valid transition metal. But just about every other periodic transition metal has got extra electrons, which are not used in bonding. So, but if you look at simple coordination compounds, you find that they have all these extra electrons, and these electrons, if you add up these electrons, they will add up to 19, 20, 15. I'm talking about the hexa-aquo complexes that are formed by nickel, vanadium, cobalt, etc. So they have these extra electrons. They're not used in bonding. They're just sitting there. At least 6 of them are sitting there in what we call as a T2G set. If you remember your coordination chemistry, you remember this T2G set. So if you look at organometallic compounds, this total number of electrons that we have added here will almost always be 18. There will be a full shell, no extra electrons. No extra electrons that are there. It always adds up to 18. So this is a very strange thing about organometallic chemistry. So what happens when you combine carbon and a transition metal is something very strange. Both of them lose their identity. Coordination compounds are very different. They do not worry about the 18 electron rule. Organometallic compounds do. Almost always they have 18 electrons. If you look at the carbon, that also loses its property. You look at carbon in methane, in any polymer, you find that carbon is tetrahedrally bonded. Or if it's got a double bond, it's trigonally bonded. Or if it's sp hybridized, it's linearly bonded. This coordination shape that it has, the compound has, is always limited to the sp hybridizations. But look at this molecule. This is a very special carbide molecule. True, it is carbide. You'll find it on the screen. You find that each of these red ions that I have listed here are actually FeCO3 units. This FeCO3 units has got one carbon, and this carbon is not tetrahedral, it's not even octahedral. It's got this weird square pyramidal shape. So you can see that this, the shape of this molecule, or carbon in this molecule, within this molecule, so very different, and it's an organometallic system. So both carbon and the metal really lose their property. Cyclobutadiene, for example, is a rectangular molecule. Most of you know that it's a rectangular molecule which is rapidly interconverting between two different rectangles, and the square cyclobutadiene is in fact much more energetically, I should say it's much more energy rich, or it's higher in energy compared to the rectangular cyclobutadiene. But the moment it is bonded to an organometallic fragment, it becomes square. It's absolutely square. Cyclobutadiene is anti-aromatic, but lo and behold, when it is bonded to iron tricarbonyl, cyclobutadiene becomes aromatic. Rectangular cyclobutadiene is not aromatic, but square cyclobutadiene bonded to an iron fragment is aromatic. So it loses its property. Chlorobenzene, you can boil it with ammonia, liquid ammonia, high pressure, high temperature, no substitution reaction will happen. No substitution will happen. But if you coordinate this to a metal, if I put a chromium metal to the chlorobenzene, immediately I can have a substitution reaction. I can have a very facile substitution reaction in this. So are we dealing with a special element? No, we are dealing with a combination of special elements. And today, if you look at organometallic chemistry, it's a very active field because there are still unsolved challenges. So if you like challenges, this is a subject that you would want to study. One of them is activation of small molecules, methane activation, carbon dioxide activation, fluoride, CF activation. These are things which are studied extensively. Secondly, if you want to do catalysis, organometallic compounds provide a fantastic opportunity to study. You have a fantastic opportunity to study organometallic catalysis. It far exceeds organocatalysis, although organocatalysis is often portrayed as very important. I have read some of the papers by organocatalysts. I have read some of the papers that deal with organocatalysis, and I found that they are nowhere near the efficiencies of the organometallic catalyst. Asymmetric induction is another challenge, and that's something that I have mentioned to you. I will deal with in the end of the course. So I've talked about the books, but let me repeat that Crabtree is probably a book which is going to be available online. The other books are available in the library, but since the library is now not accessible, you might be able to access Crabtree quite soon. Otherwise, get a copy of this. It's inexpensive and available online. So I have already told you many of these things. I'm going to stop here. Let me talk a little bit about the writing assignment. The writing assignment is something that you have to do, and I'm going to share a file with you. I will share a file with you which gives this detail completely, but I'm going to share a file with you now which will give you an understanding of what I want you to do. A critical reading assignment. Okay. The critical reading assignment that everybody does, this has been going on in my group or in my class for several years now. So I hope you're able to see the screen where I have said how to critically evaluate a paper. So I'm sorry, this is not 15th of November. I changed it last night, but somehow it has not been updated here, but it will be 15th of January. Okay, it will be 15th of January. Let me see if I can, okay, it doesn't matter. You just remember it's 50, I'll correct it in the final list that you get. You can get a paper, choose a paper from the literature which has been there for the last 6 to 12 months. Read it critically. By that I mean, don't just summarize it. Summarizing it will give you straight away maybe 40% to 50% of marks. If you summarize it well, you will get 50% marks. If you want to get 10 out of 10 in this assignment, you need to critically read it. And for that, I have given you some helpful questions. You should write it in your own words, and you should write the answers to these questions which are being scrolled on the screen, and also point out anything that they have missed. If you are able to do that, yes.
Sir. Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I hope I am the only one, but I couldn't see your screen, the critical reading assignment.
Okay. Can you just, is anybody else having this problem? Can you raise your hand, please? Anantu Ravi, what I would suggest is log off and quickly log on again. This problem happens with me. When you log off and log on, you will be able to see it. Otherwise, if you are registered, you will be given a copy of this. You should not worry. So basically, what I'm saying is, you should ask critical questions. What did the people set out to do, and what did they really discover? Are they claiming more than what they have actually done? Many times they are doing it. So if you critically evaluate this, then I give you some marks. And then I'm going to ask you to figure out if there is any bad science. Now, how do you figure out bad science? Bad science is something that is there. Let me just show you if I can show you this picture. Again, it is there. It will be there moment you are registered for the course, or if you send me an email of interest, then I will show you what is bad science. It will be there in your Teams account. How to recognize bad science. It is yes. I will have to again share the screen with you. It's probably not visible now. It should be visible now.
Yes.
Okay. So, for example, misinterpretation of results. If they have not done critical control groups, then each one of these is explained here. If they don't explain all the results properly, if they just say If they give 10 examples and they give you only one explanation, then it's cherry picking. That means you go to a grocery shop and take only the tomatoes that you want. You just don't take all the tomatoes that are there without choosing. So that's cherry picking. So correlation and causation, which is the cause, which is a correlation. This you need to understand. And I will give you plenty of examples through the course of this talk, through the course of this lectures. I will show you examples of correlation and causation. And sometimes the title will show we have proved something, and then in the text you see that they have really not proved it. It is just possibly this. So the title and what they prove should correlate. And sometimes they may not cite some people. It might have already been done and they claim that they are the first. This happens accidentally, and I will show you one or two examples in the literature where accidentally people who have claimed that they are the first have had to retract, saying that we are sorry, we missed citing this particular paper which was already there in the literature. So bad science is something that this picture is something that I'm going to share with you all, so you can go through it. Okay, so let me get back here. At the end of the course, I will have evaluation of the course, and this evaluation, this is not the right URL, this is the old URL, but I will give you the correct URL for evaluating the course. So that becomes very important for me to get feedback from you. Okay, so now I suggest that I allow you, many of you are here, let me repeat that if you want me to put you in the class notebook, then you should send me a mail. This mail should have your email ID, your IISc email ID, not your Gmail ID. And only then I will be able to add you to the Teams account. So once I add you to the Teams account, you would be able to see in your Teams account many of the things that I have said that I will share with you. Okay? Now let me ask you whether you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll show you the papers that I have. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
So you have talked about that taking class notes in the Teams account.
Yes.
Can you explain it? Because if someone is taking note in pen and paper in going through the class, then it has to be uploaded, or how it will work?
Yeah, so only today that problem will be there, but the moment you send me an email, I will add you to the account. Then I presume that you are sitting in front of a computer, and so you can directly take notes in your Teams notebook. That's what I understand. Otherwise, you write it in a piece of paper, take a picture of that, and send it to me by email for the first class. I will accept that. This is the experimental step that I'm doing. The reason is note taking is very important. I'm not just talking about this class, but it is a good skill that you can develop. And I will, because the Teams allows a personalized interaction, I will go through the TA. Oh, I forgot to mention the TA. I will mention the TA's name. The TA or me will go through and we'll evaluate your notebooks and we'll give you some points. Okay, not too much weightage, but it will be there, so that helps you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's everything is experimental, so we have to learn together. This is a new online is something that is we are just doing it for the first time. So, any other questions?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, you mentioned about the quizzes. Like,
Yes.
will it be after like a certain period of time, like surprise quizzes, or?
Okay. So, what I might do, um, I would like to know if all of you are comfortable with WhatsApp. Can I see your hands if you are comfortable with WhatsApp? We can create a group and we can send you a message. Otherwise, I will send it to you I'll send it to you as a link during the class if I have a surprise quiz. And if you click on that link, you will have a timed quiz inside the class. Okay, that will be timed. That will have to be, say, maximum of 5 minutes. But if I have a quiz that is in a Google Sheet, that will be there for maybe a week for you to do it. So you'll get 1 week to do the quiz. It'll hardly take 10 minutes. Some of you would have done Google Forms, and it's very simple. You'll be able to do it in 5-10 minutes. Siddharth.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I wanted to know means class timing because I have a class immediately after this class at 11 o'clock. So, is it possible 5 minutes
Yes.
time?
Yeah, because it's online anyways. Now you can leave. 11 o'clock you can leave. Now class is over.
Okay,
So
sir.
10 to 11 is the class. I will end exactly at 11 at the most. You are welcome to log off at 11. Yeah, because it only requires a click for you to move from one class to the other. Yeah.
Okay,
Any
sir.
other question? If you are registering, send an email. That's my third time reminder, because if you don't send me an email at ashoka, ASHOKA, at isc.ac.in, I won't be able to add you to the class. And in the subject line, put IP 312. Okay, thank you very much. We'll meet on Wednesday.
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Yes, tell me.
sir, I had one query about the class notebook. That how will I draw the structures and all the diagrams? Like I don't know much about this digital note-taking system. So if it is possible to take note in pen and paper and then upload it.
Um, sure. I'm only asking you to you can capture the structures on the screen and put them, paste them. Let us see how best this class notebook works. You can write it in pen and paper, whatever you're comfortable with, that is fine. Let's just try it out.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, so I'm not going to be particular about using only the electronic notebook, but evaluation for me will be easier if you do it online. I can see all your class notebooks individually. That means what you write there can be seen only by me or by the TA. The TA for this course is going to be Arpita, who will be in Professor P.S. Mukherjee's lab. Okay, I will send her email also shortly to all of you. She'll be visible as a teacher. So Arpita is going to be your TA, teaching assistant. Okay, any other questions? Priyanka, you can lower your hand. I think we'll have to get used to this, lowering the hand after asking the question. Otherwise,
Yes, sir.
no problem. No problem at all. We are all of us are learning, so. Okay. If there are no other questions, then let's stop this meeting. I will also stop recording, which I have to figure out how to do. Yes.